Can you imagine a world where the rights and welfare of injured workers are at the mercy of a patchwork system? A system that is inconsistent, confusing, and often unjust? That's the world we're living in right now. A world where the fate of injured workers is determined by a hodgepodge of state laws rather than a unified federal standard. In an ideal world, the rights of injured workers would be protected by a single, unified federal standard. A standard that ensures fair compensation, clear guidelines, and consistent treatment for all injured workers, regardless of where they live or work. A standard that puts the welfare of workers first, not the interests of insurance companies or employers. But we're far from that ideal world. In reality, injured workers are left to navigate a complex and often unfair system. A system where the rules change from state to state and even from case to case. A system that often leaves injured workers without the compensation they need and deserve. For years, advocates like Darren R Fonzseau have been pushing for this unified federal standard. They've been fighting for the rights of injured workers, calling for change and demanding action, but their voices have been met with silence. Silence from those who have the power to make a difference. Take Senators Sanders and Murray, for example, two figures who have long championed the rights of workers. Yet they've remained silent on this issue for 8 long years. 8 years of inaction, 8 years of missed opportunities to make a difference for injured workers. The struggles of injured workers are real and immediate. They can't wait another 8 years for action. They need change now. They need a unified federal standard now. The main points are clear. The current system is failing injured workers. A unified federal standard is the solution. Advocates like Darren R Fonzseau are fighting for this change, but they need support. They need action. Most importantly, they need Senators Sanders and Murray to break their silence, to stand up for injured workers, to push for a unified federal standard. The time for action is now, the need is urgent, the stakes are high, and the silence is unacceptable. So, as we come to the end of this discussion, remember this: injustice for one is injustice for all. It's time to raise our voices, it's time to demand action. It's time to stand up for the rights and welfare of injured workers. Because in a world where the fate of injured workers is determined by a patchwork system, no one is safe. And to Senators Sanders and Murray, we say this: 8 years of silence is enough. It's time to speak up. It's time to act, because the rights and welfare of injured workers depend on it. Is the American dream turning into a nightmare for injured workers? A provocative question, but one that demands our attention. Travel back in time to 1972. The year a federal commission recommended minimum standards for state workers' compensation laws. It was a clarion call for change, a plea to protect the rights of injured workers. But here we stand, 5 decades later, and that call remains unanswered. Move forward to 2015. Senator Patty Murray, alongside other lawmakers, acknowledged the need for federal intervention. Yet, as the calendar pages turn, the promise of action fades into the background, replaced by a deafening silence. Throughout this time, advocates like Darren R Fonzseau have tirelessly worked to bring attention to this issue. They are not just seeking sympathy. They are providing well-thought-out resolutions and seeking meaningful dialogue with their representatives. The struggle is real and the stakes are high. Injured workers are not just statistics on a government report. They are mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. They are the backbone of this country, and they deserve more than empty promises and delayed action. So, where does this leave us today? In a state of urgency. The need for a unified federal standard for workers' compensation is more pressing than ever. It's not just about financial assistance, it's about dignity, respect, and justice. In conclusion, the state of workers' compensation in America is a glaring example of a system that has failed its people. Since 1972, the lack of action has been apparent. Despite clear calls for change, lawmakers like Senator Patty Murray have yet to deliver on their promises. Advocates like Darren R Fonzseau are not just fighting for compensation, they're fighting for recognition, for dialogue, and for change. Injured workers are not just seeking sympathy, they're providing solutions and demanding attention. The time for action is now. The need for federal intervention is crystal clear. The American dream should not be a nightmare for injured workers. It's time to wake up to this reality and demand the change that's long overdue.
Hey folks, welcome to the show. The Injured Worker Show, where we give you the 5-0 or the lowdown or the skinny on what's happening to injured workers here in America. And today, the topic's going to be how injured workers have sought help from United States senators like Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell and Senator Sanders. A lot of time us injured workers get accused of just whining and not presenting any evidence or any resolutions or solution to our situation or our federal human rights issue. Well, we'd like to beg to differ and say that we have presented resolutions to people like Senator Patty Murray officially, and she refuses to respond back. So what I'm going to do today is share with you all the resolution that I've sent to Senator Sanders. I meant Senator Sanders and Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell as well, officially through their official channels. I have faxed this to them on the paperwork with permission, to give them permission to communicate with me so that we could, I could put forth this resolution that none of them are responding back to. It's a failure to represent, basically, as I've begged for help from Senator Patty Murray for 5 years now to address this human rights issue on a federal level, or at least bring attention to it, and she has refused to do so. So here's the resolution that I have sent to her as people come forth and say you're fighting the wrong way, and all you injured workers do is cry and whine, and you present no resolutions or solutions. Well, I have to beg to differ. Here's the official resolution I've sent to our United States Senator Patty Murray. And I'll put on a little music, and you guys can read through, and I'll try to page through it here, and you guys can read for yourself. There you go, folks. That is the resolution officially that I sent to Senator Patty Murray, that was done by a group of doctors. I forget the name of the doctors, but anyways, it's well put together. It's a very good list of demands for some basic human rights for injured workers across America. And if we can fight for a minimum federal standard, I think we can fight for some minimum federal rights for injured workers as well, so that one man in one state doesn't get $35,000 for an amputated arm, and a man in another state $750 for the same amputated body parts. Plus, there's the gender bias of where I as a male get 10% more for my body parts than a female will for their parts. So there's gender bias as well that needs to be addressed, and we can address this in some of these resolutions if we could get to the table. Yet we can't get to the table because people in our own, on the left, progressive left, seem to not want to do what even Senator Sanders himself 5 years ago, and Patty Murray in a letter told us needed to be done for the workers of America to stop a class war from being waged upon us at will through our health care on sniffs and grins that take us years to get correct. Anyways, thank you for taking your time to listen. And when people say we're enraged, yes, we are. But we aren't just whiners and we aren't just criers, and we actually have solutions and resolutions, but people like Jason Call for Congress have come out and told us that Med for All and Whole Washington are my Bernie-crats and Whole Washington's, our revolutions folks' priorities, not your injured workers' minimum federal standards that Senator Bernie Sanders told us we need, and Patty Murray as well. So I'm perplexed as a lifelong Democrat why I'm having such a hard time getting this truth and this issue for human rights and basic human rights for workers in America, when we pride ourselves on being better than China and Russia when it comes to basic human rights. Yet I can't get people to help me put this issue on the table, as we've lost on things like Whole Washington and Med for All now for 5 years. And we told to go away with our issue. There's something wrong with that at this point, especially since when we can trace back 15% of a takeaway from the insurance industry's own records that the employers are really happy that the grand bargain benefits have been taken away 15% over the last 5 years nationally for our injured workers. And it's been a 10-year trend. So that's a 15% takeaway, not just from injured workers, from anyone who works in America, because that affects us all in the long run, because none of us is immune from an on-the-job injury. And 1 in 4 of us will be affected by this work comp and SSDI cost shifting that goes on. Anyways, thank you for taking the time to listen, and do take time to slow it down, and I'll put a link into this resolution that I put up. Sometimes it doesn't go through all the way, so you have to click on it a couple times for it to always work. That's one reason I made the YouTube video, so as I could make sure people see this and see that I did try to seek help from people like Senator Patty Murray on this issue, and even my state rep, Emily Wicks, and Mike Sells, and Emily Wicks seem to want to have people press harassment charges on me rather than get this resolution on the table for the America's injured workers and America's workers as a whole. Thank you, and have a good day. And let's go out with the Injured Worker Show. Got a tune. Like I said, we're trying to break it down, give you the 5-0 and the skinny and the lowdown on what's happening to injured workers in America and the solutions to stop a class war on it. Thanks. You have a good one.
In the United States, every 7 seconds, a worker is injured on the job. That's over 4.5 million injured workers each year. An alarming statistic, isn't it? While many of these workers receive compensation for their injuries, a significant number are left to grapple with the financial, physical, and emotional ramifications of their accidents. Introducing Darren R Fonzseau, a man whose life took an unexpected turn due to a tragic incident in his workplace. While lifting patients as a nurse, Darren injured his back severely. The incident plunged him into the intricate maze of workers' compensation laws, which varied significantly from state to state. Darren's story is, unfortunately, not unique. Across the country, injured workers face a system that is fundamentally flawed, with compensation benefits that can differ by thousands of dollars depending on where the worker lives. In one state, a worker may receive adequate compensation for medical bills and lost wages, while in another, they may struggle to meet even basic needs. Despite the staggering disparities, there has been little federal intervention. Darren, now an advocate for injured workers' rights, reached out to senators like Patty Murray and Bernie Sanders. He hoped for a spotlight on these injustices, a call to action, but the necessary attention has not materialized. The question then arises, why is there no National Workers' Compensation Commission? Such a commission could standardize workers' compensation, ensuring equitable treatment for all injured workers, regardless of their geographical location. It's a question that Darren and thousands of others like him ask every day. The story of Darren R Fonzseau is a stark reminder of the urgent need for reform. For the millions of workers who risk their health and safety each day, the lack of federal intervention is not just a political issue, but a matter of life and death. In summary, the current state of workers' compensation in America is a patchwork of inconsistent policies, that often fail to provide adequate support for injured workers. The disparities across states are vast, and without federal intervention, many workers are left to bear the brunt of their injuries alone. The call for a National Workers' Compensation Commission is not just about standardizing compensation, it's about justice, fairness, and the right of every worker to be treated equitably. Darren R Fonzseau's story is a testament to the critical need for this reform. As we look to the future, let us remember the 4.5 million workers injured each year and let their stories inspire us to seek change. It's high time the federal government steps in. It's high time we ensure that every injured worker in America is given the support they deserve. Because every 7 seconds, another worker is injured, and every 7 seconds, we have another reason to fight for change.